Hello friends, it's me again, Vitaly Tkachenko from the School of Creativity. We will be continuing to write on marine themes. The series on marine themes is not over yet. This means that today we have a style, similar to that of Naivzovsky. Such a marine morning, calm, a very, very tranquil state of the weather, a beautiful morning with lovely pastel tones. Well, I will have oil. I love to paint with oil in the sea, in landscapes. But if you feel, you can write completely casually and calmly with acrylic or gouache. To paint with gouache or acrylic, you will need paper or cardboard, but you can also paint on canvas. If you are going to paint with oil, you definitely need a prime canvas, but you can even prime cardboard, just not on paper. So let's go through the materials. I will have brushes, as usual, with bristles of different sizes, such, about this size approximately, mostly flat. To start, I use bristle brushes for the underpainting, and then I add brushes of this kind during the process. These are flat synthetic brushes. You can also have a couple of them and 2 or 3 smaller ones. A size 1, 0, and 3 are also very good. And additionally, I always keep a fan brush at the sea. This kind of set, plus or minus, you can certainly discard some brushes, but generally, you should focus on this type of brushes. I would highlight these as probably the most essential ones from this set. You can roughly orient yourself by placing the napkins next to them. Don't forget that the bigger, the better, so that the brushes are always kept clean. I will be diluting with artistic linseed oil. I have this little oil dispenser. I squeezed out a bit and got the canvas dirty, but that's not a problem. It will all be painted over. I will also need a palette knife. A short one like this will do if it's a small painting, but you can use any shape. Just avoid square ones. Regarding the oil, I always squeeze out a larger set of white paint. Generally, if the painting is small, you don't need to squeeze out too much. Just add a little as the paint runs out. Usually, you squeeze it out at the edges to keep the center free. But overall, the bigger the palette, the better. It gives you more space. This is a small size. You can find a larger plastic one, but make sure it's not a bright color, so it doesn't interfere with the palette and makes it easier to mix colors. So, I have white, dark cherry, crimson, ultramarine blue, any yellow, orange, dark purple, Naples pink, turquoise, indigo, and from the browns, burnt umber. We've decided on the colors. Let's set this aside. If my comments are too fast for you, you can adjust the speed in the settings to make it a bit slower. So, I have told you about the paints and brushes, so we can start now. So this painting, if you actually noticed, is in a unified color scheme, a turquoise yellow one. Indeed, that is why, when there are such small details, like people on the shore, you can proceed in the following way. That is, we won't sketch the drawing first, but instead, we will prime the canvas. We will do this together now, and then we will start adding the objects. This is where we will begin. This is from the fact that I will take and display the color on the screen that we will mix together right now. It is a yellowish color. It is mixed quite simply. You take a larger brush. Despite the fact that mine are blue, it's just that the bristles are already dyed. It doesn't really affect the color anymore. It's just oil. It colors the bristles very well, and it's incredibly difficult to simply take it and restore it to its original new appearance. So I take the brush, wet it carefully, and mix a yellowish shade gently with precision. I take white and add a little bit of yellow, just a little yellow. It turns out quite light. Then I take a bit of turquoise, just a little. This is the shade I have. It turns out a bit brighter than what I displayed on the screen, but generally it's more or less acceptable. However, if you want to tone it down a bit, Because it's too bright for you, you can, for example, add a drop of indigo. But this should be done in very small amounts. A little bit of indigo always slightly dulls the color. Just a little. If necessary, it can be muted. The clay is yellow. A little bit of indigo, which is a beautiful shade of blue and often used in art. Just a little bit more. This is the shade of color. And I can mix a bit more of it with this shade of color. I will mix a bit more of it now. We will now paint the entire surface of our canvas together as a team. Let's take it very boldly, like this. And we cover it up. Well, here is the color I have shown you, right? Well, as for the color on the screen, it can be made a bit browner. You can add a little brown and it will look more similar. Just a touch of brown. Can slightly mute it. A little brown is also fine. But the color I have displayed on the screen is approximately in these light shades. We will mix it all together properly. This is the very initial process, and it is the most interesting in terms of being relaxed. If someone is a completely inexperienced artist, for example, if they are sitting down at the canvas for the very first time and don't really know where to start, I will explain. You should always start with the very simplest things. Experience comes gradually. And in this case, you see, it's very simple. I just take and cover the entire canvas. However, there are certain pitfalls with oil paint. It tends to mix easily, so you need to adapt to it. We take all of this and paint over it. Oil paint dries slowly. For those who don't know, it can take up to 3 weeks to dry. It happens, but if you place it somewhere warm, it will dry faster. Well, if it's, for example, left in the cold, it can dry even more. You can see that I didn't cover it very evenly. This is called an underpainting. You took this color and applied it. Now our task is to blend all these little drips. Take a larger brush, or the same one, and start smoothing everything out in one direction so that the entire canvas is, you can do it vertically like this. The main thing is that both sides of the brush glide smoothly so that the surface is very prepared. It will be very easy and comfortable to apply subsequent shades on this base, and it will be very easy and comfortable to work with it when it is not white paint. Our eye is structured in such a way that it comfortably perceives spots, capturing the overall essence of the color plot more easily when it is on a tone that is already close in the painting. This is the color we painted. We must smooth it out, and then we can start working with it. Next, we will determine the composition. You can find any brush on your palette, and we will mark the horizon. If you look at how much the horizon occupies in this composition, you will find that it takes up 1/3. The classic approach to the horizon. So I take, here I have indigo, right? Here it is. You can take just a little, a small amount of indigo. Mixing with white paint will give you a gray color, a gray tone that does not affect anything. You can calmly mark 1/3 of the way with your eye and draw it. Well, I will probably even stand up to draw it more or less evenly. So we mark the horizon to understand where the mountains will be and everything else. You can even add a minimal amount of paint just to outline it. We outlined it and smudged it like this, just smoothing it out. So, it looks vague, but nevertheless, we understand where it is, where it starts, and where it ends. Just a layout. This layout is for understanding where the mountains will be, where the clouds will be, and so on. Well, now we can work on the sky. If you find that you've applied too much paint here, it's better to take a tissue Dab it a bit to remove the excess and smooth it out again with a brush to avoid any spots, ensuring that everything is painted uniformly and monolithically. Right. Here it is now. Then you can get started. If there is too much paint here, you won't be able to create clouds on top, and it will be very difficult to work on the surface at all. The next shade. The next shade we will definitely have is gray. If you look, the sun seems to be shining from the left side, and the right side is a bit more purple. It's colder, and that means we are going back to indigo. I first take white paint and then take indigo. When mixing, we get a gray shade. To make the paint mix more easily and glide on the canvas, you need to add a little oil. Here we obtain gray indigo. But to make it a bit more picturesque, we can add a little purple. Look, if we take the purple and smear it like this, do you see how it turns out? We add a little bit of purple paint, and voila, we have gray with a purple tint. You see how it fits perfectly if you hold it up. So I take it, and you can also hold it up to the screen to compare. I go to the top right corner, turn off the color for you, and you compare it, write it down, and then we all cheerfully apply the gray-purple tint. The top right corner is getting actively smeared like this. In painting, there is one important rule for beginners. I would characterize it as follows. Paint was applied in a meticulous manner. Paint was spread thoroughly, and this rule works always and everywhere with complete certainty. You applied the paint, whatever you did, and leveled the paint, you smeared it, leveled it, it doesn't matter at all. The meaning is the same. That is, when applying it, be sure not to forget to soften it. Whether it will be a soft stroke or a blending, it doesn't matter at all. You need to make the transition smooth. In this scene, as this scene is quite delicate, I even do this with my hands. But who doesn't want to get their hands dirty? It's completely easy and simple to do it with a brush, but the main thing is that the brush should be dry, and when softening, it flies over the canvas, barely touching it with the very front edge of the pile. The transitions turn out to be the smoothest. Here, one part has become somewhat hazy. Well, here we also have a certain purplish hue, right? I would even say it has a bit of a pink color, but we'll get to the pink a little later. I take this color now and lighten it a bit. I go to the white paint, adding it not completely to the entire color, but next to it with a little piece to see what happens. It results in a lighter light gray color, and you can add a little more purple, a lighter gray purple. I will add it from the other side and apply it unevenly this time. Look, with strokes like this, the rule works again. I apply the paint, I soften the paint, I applied the paint. Next move, I soften the paint. Do you see what an interesting tone is being achieved? It is close in tone to the yellow that we had. From the very first time, it can be a little lighter, but it is much colder, and the pictorial quality of the sky is already emerging. Different sensations are already being created. The underpainting is starting to gradually become more complex. Next, we will make another compositional sketch. We will build, lay out, and outline the mountains. I will outline the mountains immediately with purple. The thing is, if we divide it completely, breaking it down like this, there are 3 rows, but I would highlight 2 as the main ones. There is like one level above and the very farthest one. So, I am going for the purple color. I will dilute it a little with white paint so it doesn't hit the eyes so much. Well, I can add a little oil, right? Well, in principle, this lilac color is suitable, and I am going exactly where I need to go. And I need to go right here. That is, if we have a horizon, we can roughly divide the remaining part in half. approximately in half, and this will be the highest point. Here, we will divide it in half, meaning that here we will use the backside of the brush or a palette knife. I can even make a preliminary sketch so you understand what I'm talking about. Here I have mountains, then a small gap, and another ridge goes over there. Is that clear? Yes, it's clear that I've marked it. Now we can see how and where the mountains will be, and how much space they will occupy. And now, I am going for the purple paint. I can display it on the screen for you to understand. All right, now I will select it, and you will immediately understand what it is about. This is such a lilac color. But I would like to say in absentia, I will mix a little here. I am choosing the color that is already there. This is the color it will be, but I will mix it a little darker. So I have purple. I am mixing it a bit more, making it darker, and I begin making the underpainting for my rocks. In this step where I have outlined, here it is. So I am removing purple lilac. Here. I outline why I initially mix a slightly darker color, because during blending and mixing with the underlayer, it lightens and turns out just as I need it. So, I first outline the top. Look how relief-like it is, how unusual and asymmetrical it is. I go, 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 go. Let's walk right over here and stop. In fact, we are beyond the middle of the vertical line, I mean the middle of the canvas. Further. Do you see how much further? Here is a cape like this, and here is a rock like this, meaning the left part is lower and the right part is higher. Here you will have to, whether you want to or not, touch up about this much, and then the golden rule. Apply the paint like this, smear it, level the paint, and you can use another brush. For example, one that is slightly larger and has bristles, which blends beautifully. We need to touch up and blend as usual. The golden rule is to apply and smooth it out. To understand that this part is closer and this one is further away, we need to smear this part that is further back, meaning the boundary itself, creating a smooth transition. You see, it results in a gradient, where the lower part has a hint of yellow light shining through, while the top has turned out darker. We also gather any excess oil, meaning the surface is always dried out. As I say, apply and smooth it out, level it. Well, of course, the next color. The next color is for this mountain following it. It will also be purplish, but in fact, a bit grayer. So, here we have a gray color. Here it is. Right. Grayish. It was from the sky. You add a little bit of purple to it. Just a bit. Gray-purple is coming again. But the thing is, you see, I took a different brush. It provides clarity and sharpness to the outline, and I am marking here. There it is. I would probably make this rock a bit smaller. By the way, this is a good example of how to correct something. A little lower, right here. I'm not completely covering it. Not completely. Partially? You see, I leave a gap and applied it with a dry brush, leveling it out. Therefore, it turns out that the lighter it is, the further away the object, in this case the mountain, is. This law works flawlessly all the time. But this correction, you see, it got a bit smudged here. The color of the sky can always be adjusted. Oil is excellent for corrections, especially if it dries, slowly, but you can calmly make adjustments there. Here is such a mountain, one and the other, but there is quite a sharp transition between them, really harsh. I will also slightly blend this sharp transition now with a dry brush, using a technique called dry brushing to soften the edges of the transition and ensure a smooth and seamless blend to the painting. I am leveling it out. That is, it shouldn't be too distinct like this, especially that distant one. It's so blurred, somewhat blurred. When we smear, when we level, at the same time we understand that we can shape it. Well, that is, when the paint shifts, it can be used as if we are making a sculpture together. Or, do you see how I smeared them? Do you see how I smoothed them out? They have stopped being active at all. That is, they exist, but they are in a haze, they are in fog, they are very, very far away. So here everything is a bit blurred, but of course a sense of proportion is needed, and you can also add a little bit of blue color with you. Here we turn again to the white paint, to the white color, and add a little ultramarine. Here it is. Blue. Do you see? If your mountain surface is already a bit too liquid, you can just do this without oil. Apply the paint. Here, I take a little bit of blue and add it. No oil, just a little. The thing is that the mountains in the distance have cool bluish purple shades. And the clearer the weather, the further away the mountains are from us, and the more blue they appear in the sky. Observe very carefully and very precisely the specific regions where I am doing this. Even a little bit of the top of the mountain, that is, in a dotted manner, not everywhere, leaving a purplish pink shade underneath. A little bit more. And we can even form a new slope here. Another one like this. And again, we just apply the paint. The golden rule comes into play. We soften the paint, apply, and soften. We can make it a bit more darker. Let's take a bit more of purple color. Add a little bit of purple to this color and darken it slightly. I feel like we can do a little bit more. We have beautifully layered and majestic mountains. This is what their peaks are like. And overall, you see how indeed very fascinating they really turn out. A continuous variety of options and choices available for everyone, in various forms and styles to suit different preferences and needs. Here we go. And we need to transfer exactly this shade a little onto the water. And this shade, here it is, purple. It was mixed with white, and you can add a little bit of blue. That is, from the mountains. The color from the mountains. And here, right away, underwater, well, under the rocks, under the cape, on the horizon, we create a reflection, just like that. We create the reflection, placing the brush on its wider side and start stretching it downwards. Stretch it like this, a little more. And very carefully and strictly horizontally, we commence to stretch the pink and purple colors strictly horizontally. We applied the paint, then used a rule to level the paint, meaning we spread it out. Here you go. We achieve the effect of reflection with a dry brush. You see, I am working on something, softening or shaping it a bit with just a dry brush. If I need to correct something, here you go. I take the dry brush like this and simply shift it. For example, if I want to make the rock less triangular, look, I take it like this and with the dry brush. I get in there, and the mountain is no longer so triangular. In rocks, mountains, and clouds, there should be no symmetry. Remember one of the golden rules. There should be no symmetry in the sky, in the rocks, or in nature in general. So let's move on. And according to our plan, we have the sky. Let's probably do the sky, or maybe the water. Oh, let's go with the water after all. Let's create the shore area that will be located right here. I can take my brush and now I will mark it this way. Look, if we see here, if we extend the horizon, it meets the edge of the canvas. Now, let's retreat a centimeter down and draw approximately where the green line of our shore will be. Let's lead to the center. Here will be the shore, a little triangle of the shore. Here it is. Right here will be a little shore. But first, what are we going to paint? The water? The water will definitely be a bit greener. Now I will also show you the color of the water. On clean water, and so it will simply be dark green paint. And dark green paint, by the way. By the way, how could I forget about dark green? Of course, dark green should also be on the palette. Here it is. Just green. Here it is. You see green. The only thing I would do in our place is to darken it a bit. I would add indigo to it. If there is no indigo, you can add dark brown. And as I already mentioned, we have a line that I have marked and shown you. It goes right here. Here it is. You take indigo, you take green, a color that is quite dense and dark, and you paint the coastal shoreline. The shoreline. I'm starting to get a bit confused. Here is the shallow water, just like this. Everything starts from the foundation. Just like that, and you can even continue from here. Here in this part, we paint a bit darker and more densely. Then we also go in here and add a kind of cape, but with this kind of section, a little bit. You will need to apply it, and, in a completely magical way, smooth everything out, of course. Moreover, this can be done several times. That is, you apply it, smooth it out, follow the golden rule, level it, and then you can apply and smooth it again, depending on the effect you want. A large brush helps us in such cases. It beautifully and quickly smooths things out. You can already see that the desired feeling is starting to emerge. I am removing the dark green color. You have probably already mixed it, compared it, and even applied it. Everything is blurred, pastel, and there is already some kind of plot. There is already a relationship between the land, water, and sky. Well, if you couldn't achieve that effect in one go, you can darken it several times. We laid it down and take it off again once more. So the shore. The color of the shore has been brought up on the screen. You see, it has such an interesting hue. There is a color called natural sienna, but we will mix it. So I take umber, here is the brown color, and how it can be mixed like this as we have it. You can add a little indigo to the umber, just a bit of indigo and a little bit of white. Here it is so similar. You can even add a little bit of yellow, just a touch of yellow. White, burnt umber, indigo, white, and the bright, vibrant, warm and inviting yellow color. Well, actually it's a bit marshy, right? Here it is, look. Brown, yellow, white, indigo, 4 colors. We are sending this color to travel to the shore. Here, I would wipe a little if there is too much paint. Just take a napkin and wipe it. We can proceed like this. We take the brush and start tapping on the canvas, which will immediately create a sandy texture. Alternatively, we can just smear it. When we tap, it gives a bit of a sandy texture. Well, I think we won't complicate things for now. For now, I will just do the base layer. Let's make the underpainting. You can even touch it a little with water. I'll smear it a bit with water like this. This is how it's done. Here you go. If you want, you can even add a little bit of green, just a touch of green from the palette. A tiny drop of green, but don't forget to blend, the golden rule. Apply the paint, then blend the paint, and the same color will be used now. So, I am removing this. It's not right. The same paint is going to the second shore. The second coastline is located exactly right over there. This same paint, but when applied and leveled, blended, this little cape will be lighter now. Look. Paint a small strip. Next, we clean the brush and as usual stretch it out. We stretch, that is, we level, in order to achieve balance. We stretch it out and can even leave a small strip in the form of a shore. Here you go, another cape for you. And its outline is quite curly. But on the little cape right here on the far shore there is a cool pink color. Look, we have pink paint, Neapolitan pink, right. Here it is. If you take a clean brush, add white paint to it, a touch of pink paint, and apply it to the corner like this. It will look even better. Like this. And of course we apply according to the golden rule and level it out. Carefully applied with great care. Meticulously wiped the brush with precision and leveled it. And we get a smooth transition with pink paint with such an unusual edge. This was the underpainting stage, a more advanced stage of painting. Next, we will work on some basic compositional elements. For example, we will now have clouds, and we will move on to finer and finer details. So you can take a break here. Let's continue our work. And up next, I think we will be painting clouds. So we will be painting clouds together now. Let's take a synthetic brush and clean it. I'll take one like this. So next, how to paint clouds. When they are airy, when they are not very contrasting. Now we have created a surface for the clouds. I simply take white paint and use it without oil, just thick, clean white paint without any additives. And here we have the central cloud, just like this. It's located right here, isn't it? I take thick paint and start applying beautiful fluffy clouds in white color. Why white? Because considering that they will mix right on the surface of the canvas, the shade we get from the mixing will turn out to be just what we need for a whimsical, beautiful, airy cloud. Look, it's not symmetrical. We remember the golden rule when painting clouds. Clouds should not be symmetrical. Here, a little bit of yellow paint accidentally gets in, but it fits perfectly. So, I take my brush, and it has a little corner right. And here with the corner, I am just making such an outline. This is quite interesting. Just like that. I use paint without oil, I repeat. No oil. Look, we have a main cloud and a fluffy, airy, sheep-like one, a little bit more lower. The thing is, the top of the cloud is brightly lit by the sun, while the lower part should gradually appear blurred. Therefore, you see, I don't go too far down. This is just how I shape it. I take a bit more paint. With circular movements, either clockwise or counterclockwise, I also apply the color. And you also remember the second golden rule. I would even say it is probably the main golden rule in oil painting. I applied the paint, leveled the paint, applied it, smeared it, applied it, smeared it. This is the kind of cloud I am making. Next, I take my brush and gently wipe it on a napkin. Then I level the lower part. But I only level it to the extent that I need it to be even. In other words, I don't make it completely disappear at the bottom. It still has some shape. Here, the layer of paint is a bit thinner, while on top it is thicker. That means I can take a bit more paint. Not so that it turned out lighter. That is, the top can also be brought out in oil, as a rule. We paint the light with thick paint, thicker than before, but closer to the shadow, that is, the lower part is our shadow. Here we can use a thinner layer. Therefore, by leveling the layer of paint, it becomes thinner and creates volume. These are the kinds of clouds we will create next. Next to them, we also have some clouds, but they have a less expressive light color. They are warmer. So, you can take some white paint. Here I take some white paint, and you can also take, for example, just a little bit of orange to add very, very modestly, and a bit of yellow. Orange plus yellow, but very little orange and yellow. In other words, the color should be very, very light. I can display it on the screen as an example to provide an understanding. Now I will show you the color of the cloud. Here it is. You see, it is not white. It's like this. Here it is, you see, so very dusty, and I apply this color further indeed. That is, it is very, very light, without oil. I start applying the clouds further. Here, they do not repeat. Remember, yes, they do not repeat in their shape. There is no symmetry. Again, let's recall the rules of symmetry. No symmetry. You see, a little bit more of orange gives such a golden hue. Yellow also looks good. If a synthetic brush of that size is inconvenient or not available, you can use a smaller brush, for example. Here, if they blend together, you can make it a little lighter. For example, you can add some white paint on top. To create lighting, and we level it a bit. Again, the rule. We applied it, leveled it. Next, you can scatter similar clouds, but they are smaller. Next, they are torn. Launch them across the sky and they do not repeat. So, with the brushes, watch how it wanders. It wanders like this. I just stroll around here. I also just apply it in such patches and immediately level it a little bit right. That is in order to effectively avoid such stiffness. I will probably send this same shade right here. The little cloud you see is yellowish. Here we have all the colors that are muted and closely matched in tone to each other. They are very thick. You really need to pay attention to these clouds to see that they are there. But nevertheless, look, we have everything here. Let's make those clouds a bit more airy by softening them with some pieces. But it would also be nice if we added a touch of pink, like the pink color we have on the rocks in the background. You can mix it with white paint, and let's say we add a little pink paint to the clouds right here at the bottom. We apply and level it out. Remember, we apply and level it out. Apply and smear it. That is pink. Of course, pink. You can mix it a little with white paint, and you can even add a bit of purple. Here, I'm adding just a little bit of purple, just a tiny bit. I apply directly to the clouds and level it out, adding and leveling. Here, I took purple. Here you go. The purple was from the distant mountains. Here it is, white, purple. There might be indigo. It is very muted, it is very unobtrusive. Look at this color. I am applying it here on the clouds, at the bottom already. This is how I lay. And what am I doing? I level it out again, smudging. I mean, I can't leave such a dark purple in the sky, right? It's just not there. And I smudge it because oil is plastic, everything is magnificent. And in fact, when we smudge and level, we are actually creating form. It's not just a smear. It's also about creating shape and volume. With the help of carefully pulling and stretching the paint, we shape it into the forms that we need. Sorry for tautology, but we can't escape from this anyway. If we need to highlight a little cloud, I take a bit of purple. I apply it like this. Level it, apply it, level it. You can smudge it a little with your finger like this. That is, indeed, they all turn out very blurred. You see, our picture is actually quite light and airy. Here, above the rocks, you can basically add a little bit, but I will add it. You don't have to if you don't want to. I'm just doing this to enhance the effect of the backlighting. I will take a little and add some turquoise paint. Turquoise white, a bit lighter. I'll add a little bit of yellowish to it. This is about the color. Here it is, just like this. Now I'll apply it. You will see above the rocks that not everyone needs to add this color. If someone already has it, just leave it alone. I will add a little bit to highlight the background like this, just a bit, and it will turn out yellowish green. I applied it and leveled it again. The first rule of oil painting. Turquoise white and yellowish were applied in this mix, and smudged a little like this, a bit more. I will also find some green paint that we had for the water. Green indigo, remember? I will add a little bit of it. It seems to me that I can make it a bit darker here. You will understand later why. I will add it to the water and level it again, so that we get a more contrasting reflection of the clouds above. I will darken the surface a bit. It's uneven, you see. Then I will add pink clouds, and it will look great. So, we have the clouds. Now we can work on our cape, for example. He is all about whimsical trees, illuminated in small, such fragmented ways. So, what can you do with it? You take some white paint. Let's say, even they can be a bit impure. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. We take very little white on the tip. And so, with the white paints, I will take a little bit even less paint. With a semi-dry brush, I will create a little bit more of fluffiness and unevenness there. We have some relief with the trees, and the lighting is a bit uneven. That's how it is. And here at the bottom, I will tap, taking a little bit of blue, ultramarine. You can even mix it a little with indigo so it won't be so bluish. and here it's a bit bluer. Mix with indigo, not with open blue, but mix with indigo, and tap the lower part. We will give it coolness. Again, apply the golden rule. I level it. While tapping, that is, I stretch it. Look further up, I stretch, and voila, a smooth transition has been achieved. Just like that. Excellent. There are some different little houses there. Yes, you can do it with this kind of movement. Take a little bit of white. You can even mix in a bit of yellowish. Just a little bit. And here we will hint at a couple of such movements towards the little houses. They are so small there that it is certainly not necessary to detail them here. They are in the distance. Just like that. Houses are typically formed if something needs to be removed. We remove the unnecessary excess. Please, everything is just fixable. A little town is peeking out up there. Well, now let's say we can make a little boat. The little boat is here with us. Not in the middle, but right here. Use the corner of the little cape as a reference. Now, let's move back a bit from the cape, somewhere around here. I also recommend that you find a fine brush and use the fine tip of the brush. While your paint is still wet, you can make a mark for yourself. The mark of the little boat turns out to be quite small. We are drawing boxes. It's very easy to orient ourselves. The upper boundary is the top part of the deck. And here is such a little box. You can use your finger to remove any excess. So this is the area of its location. The box is a little rectangle. On top, there will actually be the sails. You can initially, first of all, mark a vertical line for the sail and the mast. 1 mast, 2 masts. The triangular mast is right over here. It goes just like this. A little triangle like that. 2 trapezoidal sails exactly like these right in this place. Here they will be. We can start with, for example, a little boat. For the little boat, we will mix a very dark color, and this very dark color is mixed very easily. You take brown paint, add indigo to it, and get a very dark brownish shade. But it's not brown, it's more towards black. And you start applying it right here. We paint the little boat carefully. Immediately, we think about making the shape beautiful and meticulously. You can start with a simple rectangle in any case. Just take the back part like this. You see, it has a slightly shaped form, and the front part is also a bit shaped like that. This is how you can fill it with one color, and then the reflection will follow. To make the reflection truly dark, I always do it this way. I take a napkin, put it on my finger, and wipe it right under the little boat, finding the spot for myself. On the palette, remember we had dark green, and we will also add indigo. We used indigo and dark green for the water, and now I take a larger brush and emphasize under the ship with dark green paint. I pull the paint down a little like this. Again, the golden rule. Apply the paint, level the paint, and leveling is done with a dry brush. Of course, it should be a dry brush, and we do not press too hard. If we do not press, we will not have any of those marks. We do not need them. So, if we press smoothly and gently, there will be no marks. And I stretch it down calmly like this. But to make the ship truly very dark, I take indigo once more. You see, it is even blacker, just indigo. and I touch up the side of the ship with pure indigo like this at the bottom edge to make it really dark. You can even blur the boundary of the ship and the edge of the ship with the reflection. That is, there is no boundary there. You can essentially and effectively mix the boundary and the reflection with black paint. Here we go. Now next we will directly focus right ahead and on the sails. By the way, while the paint is still in place, the brown indigo from the ship, you can take it and use it in the right direction for now. Take just a little bit of it. You can use a fan brush and lightly touch up the damp part of the shore right here. This way, we can make the shape even more uneven, right here. I just take indigo, there is simply brown, and I add it like this along. Then I level it with a dry brush using the golden rule. I added and slightly leveled it a bit more. All leveling is done with a very light touch, slightly on the canvas. That is, to preserve the color while slightly blurring it, like this. I will just smear a little on the ship so that everything looks a bit indistinct. We have this indistinct thing here, and I will even adjust it slightly, a bit to make the reflection more stepped right here. Now it's good. We have the sails. For the sails, we will take brown paint. I have displayed it on the screen for you. Let's take a more comfortable brush. We take white, simply mix it with brown, and we see what comes out. It results in a brownish color. If you want, you can add a drop of green to it, just a little. Just a little bit, so that it looks more similar. Here is the color of our sails, white, brown, and a drop of green. The first sail is the most fully opened, towards us. Another sail is set. It starts right from the very top of the mast, catching the wind perfectly. It is possible that someone may encounter the problem of mixing colors. That is, it may blend too much with the background. This can happen. Well, for that, you might just need to clear a little space for the sails, gently with a napkin there. Alternatively, you can use a slightly darker paint so that it stands out more. This is how I generally paint all three sails. Here it is. This is our foundation. Of course, this is the foundation. Now the base needs to be made more lively in some way or another, perhaps. Look, I'm going into white, adding a little bit of orange. Just a tiny bit. I'm taking the palette. Here is my palette. In the corner, there is white and orange, and I start to create highlights on the sails, just like this. I take a slightly lighter corner of white and orange and illuminate it from above, creating a soft glow that enhances the overall effect. The golden rule works again. I applied it and leveled it with a dry brush, smudging it gently to blend the colors seamlessly. The transition turned out well, and a highlight was achieved, giving the piece a more dynamic and vibrant look. I am going to add a little bit of highlight in the nearby area to enhance the overall appearance. You can even add a little bit of crimson, then the color will turn out a bit pinker, and here too. I apply and level. I apply and level the paint here, too, in the corner. I carefully applied and smeared the paint, ensuring an even coat. Then I will use a simple paint called indigo. We take just indigo, a rich and deep blue color, and start outlining the sails from the inside. This process involves carefully tracing the edges and making sure the lines are smooth and precise. The indigo paint provides a beautiful contrast and helps to define the shape of the sails clearly. By taking our time and paying attention to detail, we can achieve a professional and polished look. We apply it just like this, separating them from each other and leveling it out. You see, technically, oil is applied exactly like this. I will take a little more indigo paint, carefully dipping my brush into the rich, deep blue pigment. With a steady hand, I will apply it from the other side of the canvas, ensuring that the color is evenly distributed. As I work, I am blending the indigo with the existing layers of paint, creating a smooth transition between the shades. I am also leveling the surface to achieve a uniform texture, making sure that there are no harsh lines or uneven areas. This process requires patience and precision, as I meticulously adjust the pressure and angle of my brush to achieve the desired effect. The goal is to create a harmonious blend of colors that enhances the overall composition of the artwork. It results in such interesting contouring. Let's create a little thing, like a shadow, perhaps adding a bit more detail to it. You need to stand right here on the corner, exactly like this, to ensure everything is perfectly aligned and in the correct position. Well, to make the ship truly a ship, you can use the finest brush. I have this super fine brush here. Find indigo and brown. Add more oil carefully and slowly. You can create such incredibly beautiful, intricate, and detailed masts. Well, if there is, let's say, a genuine and understandable fear of ruining it, you can always perhaps use a palette knife. Here we take a brush. I will make one with a brush, the mast, like this. And I will make the second one with a palette knife. Let me just remind you how to use the palette knife. For example, I have a palette knife of this shape. I have this liquid paint in brown and black, and indigo in a sense. There is oil there. I moisten the side. I start by applying the heel like this. That is, I don't apply the tip entirely, but first I apply one side to understand which direction to go. You can even tilt them a little. And then I draw like this. Oops! And you get a perfectly straight line. The horizontal ones too. You can draw them the same way. First the tip. Then I place the whole thing, or vice versa. You can add a little more brown. Just a little. Here in this video, I will carefully draw a mass like this, step by step. And it's really cool to use a palette knife to create the ropes. There, of course, they may not be very visible, but nevertheless, you can definitely somehow add detail to the ropes. And you do it once. The main thing is not to take too much paint, so it doesn't turn out rough, you know, like those clothes. The strings certainly and definitely add emotions of such realism to us. There are a few of them, but nevertheless, they exist. I also love to scratch some details with the backside of the palette knife. You just take it and scratch a little like this. Let's say this is some kind of pattern or trim on the ship. From the back, from the stern, small intricate details emerge. If it turned out too obvious, just take a dry brush, smudge it a little, and everything will be fine. I would also add a little bit of light blue color right here on the very edge, just a tiny little bit.
You can take a smaller, more precise brush and add a bluish, almost sky-like tint. It's a small, yet significant detail, but one that truly brings the painting to life. And at the very bottom, maybe a little subtle stripe on the side here at the stern, like this. And everything immediately comes to life and becomes much more vibrant. But overall, the ship itself shouldn't be too distinct. You can also add some horizontal crossbars like this. This can be done with a brush or even a palette knife, I repeat. We have that available. A little flag, but it has such an indeterminate color, somewhat brownish. Here is a small little flag. I will add that too. Well, with a light color, let's say a little white and a bit of orange, you can add it with the finest brush. I love such processes. Such nuances, light. Here I am already applying paint with oil. A little white, a little orange, a lighter shade. Just like that. Everything starts to look distinctly different immediately, right away. It's as if the ship becomes more lively and animated. I'll make it a little bit more darker, but I'm using indigo and slightly refining the stern with a darker tone. Here we have such a beautiful ship. Next, if we take the colors of our sails, white, brown, and indigo, which we seem to have used, we must definitely reflect them on the water. Take the beautiful color of the sails and reflect them on the water, like this. The golden rule is to apply and blend with a light touch. If you press too hard, the paint will disappear and it will turn out pale. You can also add some shades. For example, a bit of indigo to the color of the sail's reflection, like this. And even a little bit of orange like this, adding and smearing it. And of course, how can we not reflect the masts? And for this, just take some indigo and continue the mast downwards with a fine brush like this. You can even make some little strokes like that. This will give you the reflection of the masts. They go down quite long, like this. But don't forget to use a dry brush to slightly level it out, so that the masts don't turn out too distinct. I added some ropes as well. Here we also have indigo and brown, and with a fine brush, we can create various small boats here. Look, they are standing at the pier. They are just little boxes with such strokes. When you apply them, they will blend and won't be as black as on the palette. You take and make these little boxes, and from the boxes, you lift up such thin spikes. These will be the masts, of course, with the finest brush, naturally, the box and the mast. Just like that. And don't forget to simply reflect them as well. Just continue down with the water. And you'll also get the reflection, carefully and gently. In the corner, there is a small boat that is slightly browner in color, just sitting right there. It looks like it has been there for quite some time, blending into its surroundings. There, they are more brownish, lighter, and the masts are thin. Here, they are darker and closer, while further away, they are lighter. While we have a fine brush in our hand, we can create some houses, but this is done in the form of slightly blurred light dots. We can kind of complement it like this. A few houses, scattered somewhat chaotically across the landscape, stood with their unique architectural styles, surrounded by overgrown gardens and winding paths. Then it creates some kind of life in a mysterious way. Well, I moved to the shore, and then I eventually moved to the shore in a calm manner. On the beautiful, intricate, and varied shore, we are greeted by the unique texture of the stones. I go to the white paint, take a fan brush, and pick up a little bit of orange into the white paint. This creates a light orange color. And with the light orange color, I start doing it like this. With the dull paint right here, we can slightly outline the contour to make it a bit more even. And here we move in this kind of spirit. Thus, we obtain fine, small pebbles. Additionally, we have the option to incorporate a small amount of a brown indigo mixture into the pebbles. But it is important to ensure that we do not add too much of this mixture. And I slightly level it with a dry brush to press down the stones so they are not so obvious. Now I take a medium brush, let's say a round one, and I return to indigo and brown paint to draw these kinds of stones. I want to note that I am simply painting shadows on the stones, and it looks as if these are stones. Don't forget that the stones also follow the golden rule. They should not be symmetrical, of the same size, or at equal distances from each other. Different sizes, just like these small stones, are darker than anything on the ground. So, let's scatter a bunch of stones and some underwater life, like algae, stones, and mud. I will take some more indigo and add it right here. Here. I am already moving in these horizontal directions. I might even take a smaller brush, the very thinnest one. And with these horizontal strokes, I will apply some shadows like this. First I took indigo, and then I will probably take brown. Just brown. I can mix in a little bit of yellow. And I mix, apply, and level it again. It's the same old story, once again. I applied and smeared it, just like that, carefully smeared it, I leveled it. The small and smooth pebbles that we placed should also be carefully and evenly leveled. Otherwise they will look very out of place. If they became too light while smearing, I bring back their former shadow. Here it is. Well, since we are definitely indeed with you by the water, I take green and indigo to make the water a bit darker. Look, I have indigo and green, and no oil, just dark green paint, as dark as possible. With these movements, I go in with a slanted brush, unevenly, to create dark stones, right here in the shallow water. I do it unevenly. The brush has worn a bit, and gives me such underwater textures quite successfully. But here I need to understand that this effect shouldn't be throughout the entire sea, of course. Only in the foreground. Further back, you see it kind of fades away, unnoticed. I apply it,
and again use a dry brush to level it out. The golden rule. Just like this. You should mix just a little without really touching. Just stop at the right moment. Carefully. Next, I will take a little bit of white color with the same brush. You see, just a little bit of white on the very tip of the brush. Before that, it needs to be pressed down tightly so that it becomes flat. So, like this, I put a little bit of white color on the brush and approach from the top with white like this, adding a line of surf with a careful movement. I wipe the brush because the paint has mixed a bit, just like this. And again, we can achieve the same effect using a fine brush. For example, if it's convenient, just a small thin brush. Now, of course, I will take and make the dark boats here at the pier. Here we have some boats standing at the pier. You can simply take indigo with this brush I have. We won't break down each boat because they are in the shadow. We just need to create the feeling that there are boats there. I do it like this. I can just simply mix in a little bit of brown paint like this. I'm making one boat, then a second, and then conditionally a third. And the right corner should be as dark as possible. Really, extremely very dark. Just like that. If it doesn't darken, you can take advantage of the following moment. Wipe this area dry and apply it again, so that it is really very dark there. I will paint over it again to make it darker, right in this spot. I applied the paint, and of course I will level the lower part again. I will smear it a little like this, to turn it simply into a shadow. There are no distinct boundaries there. I can also make some dark stones. With the help of a fine brush, I will also level the side part a bit, giving it some blur. I will make the outline a little more resembling a boat, adding a bit of a bow here, just adding a silhouette. It shouldn't be too flat. Then I will take some white paint and do it like this with the white. Let me remind you that these are little boats, just along the edges. And again, what will I do? I will level it out, apply it, and definitely level it out, because it will be too white. If we leave it like this, slightly smudging it, it turns into a light grey, and some play of light and shadow gives us an understanding that there are just the bows of the ships, boats, here. These are not little ships, these are boats. These are little boats, of course. Yes, you can also use dark paint to make something like a little person. His head is like this. It's round here, very small, a very small head, and I add the shoulders with white paint like this. It creates the feeling that there is a person standing there, but it is so microscopic there that it is not worth getting hung up on it. You can simply make a shape like this. Like this. And I will also take the color indigo, mix it a little with brown, and with the thinnest brush, I will make 3 people sitting here. But this is done at will, absolutely according to one's abilities. I do not recommend attempting this if someone does not know how to do it at all, but nevertheless, I will show. I take indigo and brown, the thinnest brush, and here in this place, tiny little people. I first then add the body. This is a girl in a skirt. Her head is slightly tilted. I first draw the silhouettes, and then I will add the color.
The second girl is standing there. The second little person. A little lower, next to it. Like this. They turn out to be quite are so small that they are unrecognizable. That is, just such little silhouettes. You see, the head and shoulders are slightly wider, and the torso narrows down. The figure decreases in size. The third figure. This little man is apparently sitting there, head. And his seated figure, just like that in the end. Their shadow falls safely. Here I take pure indigo. I lay down such a dark, dark shadow a little diagonally and blend it out, especially at the edge, so that it smudges. If needed, I can also darken, for example, the dress of the woman, right here at the skirt. And overall, they have dark figures. There is just a small nuance. With white paint, pure white, you can use the thinnest brush to create this color on the shoulders, on the head, at the back of the head, and on the hands. And a little light for the man who is currently sitting as well. And a bit more light for the man who is somewhat sitting as well. The shirts, but they are made conditionally, and if someone does not feel the strength to make them, it is better not to do it. They are not the main focus here. You can even add a little bit of yellow by mixing white with yellow to make the color a bit warmer. For instance, if you are painting a sunset, adding a touch of yellow to the white can create a more realistic and vibrant hue. This technique is particularly useful in creating highlights and adding depth to your artwork. Well then, let's move on to the next step, where we will explore how to blend these colors seamlessly to achieve a smooth gradient effect. This will enhance the overall appearance of your painting and make it look more professional. Our experienced fishermen are ready, and I need to move on to the next important task. Next, I definitely need to create some shadows from the ship. And we definitely have these little stones here. Or are the little birds perhaps floating, catching here like this at the bottom? The reflection of the sky, with its beautiful array of colors, danced upon the calm water, creating a serene and mesmerizing scene. So, the reflection of the sky. And I will work a bit with the water. I find my pink paint, white paint. So, I need to clean the brush. This is my clean and well-maintained brush, which I have carefully coated with a layer of pristine white paint. White, a little bit of pink, just a bit lighter, a nice pinkish color. And I will create a reflection on the water, just like this. And if we add an orange, it will probably be even better. Let's add a bit of orange to that color as well. Oh yes, it's such a salmon color. And with this movement, I will create the reflection from the clouds, white, pink, and a little orange. And of course, I will level it out again like this with a dry brush. A flat dry brush helps me with this. And at the same time, I will slightly blur the reflection from the sails. I just need to blur it a little so that it isn't so distinct. And I'll make the shape just right.
You can even make it a little bit darker green right here, in this area, just a tiny bit more. Surely you have some purple paint left. Here it is, bright purple, with a bit of white. A very sufficiently bright shadow from the ship extends sideways, and indeed, right here. You can even add just a little bit of blue. It will become even more interesting. And here I add such a diagonal shadow to the design, effectively and seamlessly. That's it. And of course, as you might have guessed, we will level it out a little bit more. I will pull it a little into the shadow here, and with a dry brush, barely touching, I will slightly blur the edges. Here, I will highlight a bit with white from the bottom like this, and smear it. It's beautiful, indeed. It would be really cool if you did this together with me, adding a bit of white without oil for the reflection from the clouds. I am wiping the brushes dry again, leveling everything out, and it all turns out just right. Such ripples on the water also add realism and depth to the scene. Let's add here as well, already strictly horizontal, and I will level it. I add and level it. That is, the water is painted both vertically and horizontally, sometimes vertically, sometimes horizontally. This is how we achieve what we want. I'll soften these little houses a bit. They are too distinct. I will, of course, soften some of the stones with a dry brush. I will take little indigo with the finest brush and make something here that I can't quite say what it is. It seems to me that maybe there are pebbles scattered diagonally here, very small, almost like a wedge. There are birds flying in flocks, right above the water. God knows, maybe something is floating there. But it definitely shouldn't be left so distinct. With a dry brush, I need to smudge it a bit, otherwise it will look too precise, like a patch. Yes, just a little smudge. Let's level it out. We applied it and leveled it. With a dry brush, I will probably smudge it like this. A little to the side, just like that. Let's smudge it slightly. I will definitely smudge it a bit more clearly. One more time. Again. I will make them smaller, not so many. You see, everything blends perfectly. And there is no feeling that nothing can be fixed. Everything can be corrected. I just take some water and slightly adjust the color with the water. I simply remove the excess. The main thing is not to do this in black. You cannot use gas black for such moments, otherwise you will ruin it. Gas black is an extremely unique and highly caustic paint. There is such a thing here in a blue color. and a couple of little ships on the horizon in a grey color. Any grey color will do. It can be warm or it can be cool. I see a purplish shade there, quite light, but nevertheless darker than our cliffs. Right here, a little ship is sailing in the distance. Let's add it. Another one. And let's just smudge it a little bit, slightly with a dry brush. And we will definitely obtain what we need. Any shape can be absolutely adjusted. Any shape. For example, we can precisely add relief to the cliffs. It's easy. The outline is smudged with too distinct an indigo. Please take a dry brush and smudge it a little. Everything is fixable, everything is done as we want. And thus we obtain a true painting in a way that is truly and authentically captures the essence of the great and renowned artists from the past, in the spirit of the old masters. I always take a final look and see what I might be missing. For example, if I want to return to the clouds, I would add a little bit of yellow. On this side, a muted yellow, just a bit. I can add it and slightly blend it as usual, just like always. If I need to create light on the clouds and highlight them, I take some white paint and use a brush to highlight. Of course, it goes without saying, we take one that suits us, that is convenient for us, and of a small size. There are many pieces of fluffy clouds, floating in the sky, appearing in various shapes and sizes. Well, we just need to simply measure the frame traditionally and accurately in a traditional manner. Don't forget to look at the picture from a distance. You might want to add something. For some reason, when I put on the frame, I immediately see that I want to add a bit of shadow, not on the clouds. I want to take a muted purple and refine the volume a little from this side. Let's choose that and use slightly rounded movements. A bit of volume. I think it will look good. Well, let's not forget to level all of this a bit. Then, in the end, everything will turn out to be perfectly fine and absolutely wonderful, just as we had hoped and expected. We step back a little and realize that the painting in the frame already has a complete and finished look. We see that it is ready. Don't forget to take breaks and place the painting further away from yourself, as this is very important. This way, you will notice mistakes, and you can also turn the painting around to understand the tonalities where there might be some discrepancies. The tone is better seen in an inverted state, and the color as well. Well, this was Vitaly Tkachenko, School of Creativity. The marine theme will continue. Thank you all everyone, and see you very soon next time.